Can I move to the figures around poverty that I know you've been asked questions about in the media? The 250,000 figure about people in poverty, including 50,000 children moving into poverty. I know you say those figures do not take account of those that you get back into work. Do you expect that all of those families will have people in them that will be able to get back into work, and therefore that figure will go down to zero? Or what proportion of people do you think might still be in poverty by the end of these measures?
I don't want to preempt the work that's now going to take place in assessing that.
All right, chums, gather round. Pop the kettle on, grab a digestive, and brace yourself for one of the most gloriously awkward parliamentary grillings this side of a soggy fish finger sandwich. What you're about to witness is pure political theater, delightfully British, exquisitely squirm-inducing, the sort of moment that makes even a stiff upper lip twitch with secondhand embarrassment. Yes, we're talking about the mighty grilling unleashed by Bobby Dean MP, armed with questions hotter than a vindaloo left out in the sun, aimed squarely at Rachel Reeves. Buckle up, because this is a roller coaster of stats, stumbles, and the kind of mumbling that makes a GCSE student winging their oral exam look like Churchill. But before we dive in, a quick favor. If you enjoy this content, give the video a like and subscribe to the channel. Over 98% of you watch without subscribing. It costs nothing, but it helps us massively.
The stated purpose of reforms is to get more people back into work. Yeah. Many PIP claimants are already in work, and others probably are unable to work permanently. So of the 800,000 that look like they're set to lose out on PIP claimants going forward, saved by the bell. Can I complete the question? Yeah, so the 800,000 that are set to lose out, what proportion of those would you expect to get back into work?
And Chancellor Bobby Dean had just asked you a question, conveniently got to the end of the sentence, so perhaps you could answer that question. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you for your question. So we think about 17% of people who are on personal independence payments are also in work. I can't tell you what proportion of the 800,000 you refer to are in work. And indeed, the OBR have committed to work over the summer to look at the package that we announced, the £1 billion to help people get back into work, to make estimates of those numbers. And of course, if people get back into work, that boosts their incomes and their families' incomes.
I believe there was some analysis done of the people that were passing the assessment criteria, how close they were and so on. So would that also give you an indication of what percentage of people that are on PIP that would never really be realistically able to be back into work? Do you have a figure for that as well?
Well, the point of our reforms is that we want to support those people with the most severe health and disability needs, which is why in the Green Paper that we published alongside the Secretary of State's statement, we're consulting on additional support for those with the most severe needs. We also want to ensure, because the changes only kick in when you have your PIP reassessment, so nothing changes straight away. It's only when you have your reassessment. But when those reassessments happen, we want those reassessments to be done much more face-to-face. Before the pandemic, 7 in 10 people who had a PIP assessment had a face-to-face assessment. It's now less than 1 in 10. And as a result, we don't think that those assessments are really picking up people's needs or assessing the points in a way that I think would be more appropriate. So when those people come up to their reassessments, we want them to be seen face-to-face by a trained assessor to make sure they get the support they need, whether that is support in terms of benefits or support in terms of getting into work.
So are you quite confident then that everybody that ends up dropping out of the eligibility criteria has the potential to work and that you'll be able to get them into work?
We know there are hundreds of thousands of people with a disability who want to work, and there are many people with disabilities who already do work, and we want to give them more support, whether that's adjustments in the workplace, whether it is training, for more of them to fulfil their potential. I don't want to write people off, and I think that has happened for too long for too many people, whether it's mental or physical health or disabilities that they have. And so the idea of this tailored package is to give people the support they need to fulfil their potential.
Yeah, and I think many people support that. I mean, I've got some fantastic charities working in my own area trying to get people with disabilities into the workplace and to keep them there when they're there. I think that's a noble effort. I think people's concern is there might be some that fall through the tracks or face unnecessary hardship as a result of this. Can I move to the figures around poverty that I know you've been asked questions about in the media? The 250,000 figure about people in poverty, including 50,000 children moving into poverty. I know you say those figures do not take account of those that you get back into work. Do you expect that all of those families will have people in them that will be able to get back into work, and therefore that figure will go down to zero? Or what proportion of people do you think might still be in poverty by the end of these measures?
I don't want to preempt the work that's now going to take place in assessing that, but I am confident that those impact assessments don't reflect what will happen, because it is inconceivable that you put £1 billion into targeted personalised support and it makes no difference. In fact, all of the evidence, for example, under the last Labour government, the New Deal for working people and the New Deal particularly for disabled people, was that we were able to support people back into work. And I was at my own constituency's job centre just a couple of weeks ago in Pudsey in Leeds, where the work coaches were telling me extraordinary stories about the people they had supported back into work, many of whom had been very far from the labour market, and some had never worked before and some who hadn't worked for a long time, and they said with more resource they could do more to help people back into work. And that's what we're determined to do as a government. Very few countries are in a position like ours where participation has fallen since the pandemic. I don't believe as a country we're getting more sick and more disabled, and yet 1,000 people a day are going on to these benefits, and I just don't think that is sustainable, and I also think we're doing a disservice to people, putting them onto benefits rather than supporting them to get into work.
Yeah, so just finally then, we're going to have some more work done on this by the OBR over the summer to assess this. Is it your view then that it will become much clearer by the autumn, when we get the next forecast, about how many families may end up in poverty as a result of this, and how many people will be getting back into work? Will we have figures at that point?
Yeah, I mean, this is not the only thing we're doing as well, remember. We're beginning to roll out the free breakfast clubs.
But will we have those figures in the autumn?
Well, yes, that's what they're going to provide. But this is not the only thing we are doing. This £1 billion back to work package is just one of a number of measures we're doing to help people into work. The conversation we've already had around apprenticeships, the increase in the national minimum wage, the national living wage, the employment rights bill. This is all about ensuring that work pays and people are supported into work.
Our tale begins, as so many do, with a deceptively polite question. Bobby Dean leans in with that classic British charm, sweet as tea, sharp as razor wire. He asks Rachel Reeves to clarify something rather important: the government's shiny new reforms. The big claim? They'll get people back into work. Splendid. Except Bobby points out many on personal independence payments already are working. Others desperately want to work, but physically can't. Then comes a kicker. Of the 800,000 people projected to lose PAP in future, how many does a chancellor actually expect to march straight back into work? Reeves, blinking like she's just been ambushed with a pop quiz on her way to the Commons bar, starts up. She thanks Bobby, thanks the chair, thanks the janitor. Probably would have thanked her dog if we'd let her. And then the stats flow. About 17% on PAP are in work. But how many of the 800,000? She doesn't know. Not yet. Don't worry, though. She says the OBR will crunch the numbers over the summer. That's right, folks. We'll just have to wait for Westminster's version of summer holiday homework. You'd think the government might have a basic figure to guide policy, right? But instead, Rachel shifts in her seat like she's just sat on a lukewarm sausage roll. She pivots to say the reforms are aimed at supporting people with the most severe needs. She waves a green paper around, talks about face-to-face assessments, and points out that before the pandemic, 7 in 10 people had them in person. Now it's less than 1 in 10. Big problem. She says, the solution? More face-to-face assessments. Clear as mud. And then Bobby Dean delivers a real zinger, British MP style. Polite smile, cricket bat in hand. He asks, is she really confident that everyone who drops off the benefit rolls will actually be able to work? Not some, not most, but everyone. Ouch. Rachel reels like a contestant on The Weakest Link who's just been asked to spell bureaucracy under pressure. She rallies, insisting there are hundreds of thousands of disabled people who want to work. Many who already do. The goal, Rachel insists, is simple. More support, workplace adjustments, training, and absolutely no writing people off. Jolly good. Lovely on paper. But Bobby, bless his relentless soul, isn't letting go. He nods politely. praises the charities doing brilliant work getting disabled people into jobs, and then smashes the teacup straight onto the saucer. What about poverty? Because 250,000 people, 50,000 of them children, could slip into it under these reforms. What happens to them? Rachel takes a long breath, like she's desperately trying to remember where she left the emergency stats binder. She says she won't preempt the data, but insists it's inconceivable. Yes, she repeats it twice, that pumping £1 billion into targeted support won't help. In theory, fair enough. You fund support, people get jobs, they earn wages, boom, less poverty. But then she pivots into a nostalgic flashback. Cue soft violins. The New Deal for working people. The New Deal for disabled people. Job centers bursting with miracle working coaches. She even tells us about her recent visit to a local job center, where she heard tales so uplifting you'd think Ken Loach himself had brought the cameras. People who'd never worked before back in employment. People who hadn't worked in years, suddenly reborn in the workforce. Fairy dust included, free of charge. Bobby, though, is having none of it. He points out the awkward reality. Participation rates have actually fallen since the pandemic. And, oh yes, 1,000 people every single day are now claiming disability benefits. Then he asks the question no politician really wants to touch. Are we honestly becoming that much sicker and more disabled as a nation? Or is something else going on? Rachel, feeling the common spotlight turn into a heat lamp, doubles down. It's not sustainable, she says. We're doing people a disservice by keeping them on benefits instead of offering a shot at work. It's about opportunity, not dependency. Stirring stuff, almost speechwriter material. And just when you think the grilling is winding down, Bobby tosses in one last cheeky curveball. So, will we actually have the proper figures by autumn? Will we finally know how many families might fall into poverty or climb back into work? Asterisk, will the data be there? Rachel gives a confident nod. Yes, it will. But wait, don't forget, she says, the £1 billion work package isn't the only arrow in the government's quiver. No, they've also got free breakfast clubs. Yes, nothing says macroeconomic reform quite like a bowl of Cocoa Pops. Add in the national minimum wage, the employment rights bill, and more apprenticeships than you can shake a clipboard at. And there you have it. A parliamentary exchange so gloriously British, it practically served itself with a side of mushy peas. Bobby Dean asked the questions we all wanted answered, politely, persistently, and with a twinkle of mischief. Rachel Reeves responded with confidence, caution, and some Olympic-level political tap dancing. She had stats, anecdotes, green papers, face-to-face assessments. But somehow, the meat and the policy sandwich never quite arrived. So, what did we learn? That reforms are complicated, that numbers are slippery, and that even £1 billion doesn't guarantee clarity. But most importantly, we learned that British politics remains the greatest spectator sport on earth. No pyro, no chair throwing, just a cool, calm Bobby Dean and a slightly flustered Rachel Reeves waltzing through policy under the common spotlight. And as we sip the last of our tea, let's appreciate these small joys of parliamentary sparring. It's not about who wins or loses. It's about who escapes with their dignity mostly intact. For that, both deserve a round of applause or at least a polite cough of approval. So next time you see a debate brewing in the Commons, grab your biscuits and tune in. Because you never know when someone like Bobby Dean will ask a simple question, and someone like Rachel Reeves will try to answer it with a spreadsheet, a smile, and a prayer. Asterisk,